Welcome everyone, I hope you're having a very wonderful day, and welcome to my guide for coyotes for New England Mountains. Before we get into it, let me quickly break down on how today's guide is going to work. So first we're going to cover animal hotspots and locations, and then we're going to move on to weapon recommendations, and then end in today's video with the animal profile. So let's get right into it. So typically I like to take you guys to locations to show you where the average hotspots are, but since coyotes are a tad different from most other animals, they're relatively just like the bears and bobcats and foxes that you'll encounter on the map, except for that they actually do have groups, but however I cannot locate actual hotspots from where coyote groups like to reside, and I feel like they're always going to be different from everybody. So we're just going to cover general locations, and I'm going to show you guys typically where I find a majority of my coyotes at. So coyotes spawn anywhere below this creek bed here, so just on the lower half of the map here is where coyotes like to reside. Now, how I find most of them is, shockingly, I find most of them on the river stretches, wrapping all the way around. And one major technical hotspot when it comes to hunting on the rivers, which I get a lot of singles on, and where most of some of my groups reside, is the actual middle section of the map here. This creek bed is a pretty good hotspot in my opinion for coyotes, and I also think this left-hand stretch is really, really solid for coyotes. From this river here, or this bridge here on this river stretch, all the way up to the other river right here is pretty good for some coyote action. On the right hand side, all honesty, I have not experienced a lot at the lakes here. I have not experienced a lot on the river stretches, but these three lakes here are pretty common for some singles to spawn. I do have an active group sitting here, so there could be a possibility that one of these lakes is a guaranteed perfect hotspot for coyotes. However, I don't have enough information to really decide on that. But that pretty much covers it for coyote locations. We're going to move on to weapon recommendations, so I will see you guys there in a moment. Alrighty, so we're here back in the outpost. I'm going to mention quickly three things. First thing is that I'm only going to be covering rifles, handguns, and shotguns. I'll not be covering bows because I'm not a bow expert, and I will leave that to the professionals. Secondly, these are my personal recommendations. I always suggest going out there, exploring to see what suits you and what you enjoy playing with. And then lastly, I'll be mentioning all the DLCs these weapons come from in case you want to pick them up for yourself. So let's get right into it with our first rifle today. The 22 Hornet is very solid in my opinion. It's very fun to use. The ammo is cheap. The recoil is relatively low. You got 6 rounds in the magazine, and it is a blast to use. Now, when you shoot a coyote with this, it's going to run for a little bit. It's not an insta-killer like the 243s or anything that I'm going to be mentioning later on in today's video, but it will get the job done, and it's very fun using. You pick it up on the Mississippi map. And before I forget, I want to mention one thing. I always recommend for this map to bring up weapons that can place solid follow-up shots on, because the rocks on this map have the hitbox of a minivan, and when you shoot through a clear gap, sometimes the round will just get absorbed in the rock and the animal just will look at you like you're stupid. So I always recommend just bringing that just in case. Any follow-up shot weapon that's relatively easy to place, just recommend it. Further on, we're going to come across our first free base game weapon, the Ranger 243. Very solid rifle to get at the start of the game. It will insta-kill them perfectly, so you don't have to go far. So I highly recommend picking that bad boy up and bringing it with you. If you don't want to spend money for the game, this is the rifle for you. Now further on, we're going to be covering our king of the crop here. This is my biased opinion every single time, every video with small animals. The 22-250. Beautiful weapon. Highly recommend just using it all the time for small animals. It's really fun. So I recommend busting that bad boy out. And you could find it in the Emerald Coast DLC, which I always highly recommend picking up. And I think that pretty much covers all of the rifles for today's video. We're going to move on to handguns, and we're only going to be covering one handgun today, the 243 Kumo. Very solid, very fun to use. Even though I said bring up something that can do follow-up shots, if you're jumping around the lakes looking for a coyote, I recommend busting this thing out if you want to level up your handguns, or just give this thing a try. It's very fun, very gimmicky, and you can put rifle scopes on it. I'm pretty sure you can also put the night vision scopes on it. I still haven't even put a night vision scope on it to test it out, but it is a blast, and you could find this thing in the Assorted Sidearms Pack DLC. So that's it for handguns. We're going to move on to shotguns, and I'm only going to be covering one shotgun today, and it is the Norden 20 gauge. Very solid. You have 3 rounds in the tube. It's semi-auto, and you can just blast away with it. Especially since you need follow-up shots, I recommend bringing this bad boy. And you could find it in the, I believe, the Duck and Cover Pack DLC. That's exactly where it's from. The Duck and Cover Pack DLC is where you can pick this bad boy up on. And that's pretty much it for weapon recommendations. So we're going to move on to the animal profile, and I will see you guys there. And here we are at the end of today's video, so I'm going to do a quick breakdown on it before I let you guys go. On the left-hand side, we have all of our basic Coyote information covering the class, difficulty, silver, gold, and diamond threshold range. We have our weight from least to greatest, and in kilograms and in pounds. We have our fur type covering common, rare, and very rare. I'm not going to cover anything on the middle section of the map because we've already covered that in the first section of today's video. And on the right-hand side, we have our time zones to make your hunt life 10 times easier. It's all organized, and then below that, we have our ammo chart covering for full integrity kills. So that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys could leave a like, it really helps the channel, and I hope you guys have a very wonderful day. Happy hunting, good luck, and I will see you guys in the next one.